Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the Blacklist. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I really like that the Blacklist for this episode was Captain Kidd, which I mean, obviously I know it's referencing the pirate, but it also makes me think of Persona 5, because obviously that being Ryuji's persona, at least his initial persona, which that's a whole thing. But I know a lot of those are based on literature characters as well as just historical characters to a certain extent. So it makes sense, Captain Kidd being a real person and everything. Regardless, I just thought it was interesting. Even the fact is that Reddington said Captain Kidd seems like he was actually the only pirate that actually buried his treasure, what I thought was interesting, because that's always a staple of pirates bury treasure, but for it to be he's apparently the only one who did it was really interesting. But it was also interesting how we got introduced to this case, because some kids were messing around, scary story and stuff like that. And I thought when the kid was bumping something, I was like, is that drugs? I was like, nah, it's most likely some stuff to hide the odor of a dead body or something like that. No, turns out it is drugs. The moment the kid comes out, gasping for air, and white foam coming from him, I was like, is he overdosing? I was like, those were drugs. Turns out to be the case. Basically, the Captain Kidd's whole criminal system is that basically he acts as the middleman. Basically, he sets up deals between buyers and dealers, and obviously he arranges hey, I hide this thing that the seller wanted to sell. Well, it's here. I will hold on to it. The buyer will have to then make sure the money goes through. Once the seller's okay with everything, then I basically give the GPS location. So there's a lot of steps in between, so you don't catch up to what he's up to. Well, Reddington brought this case up for multiple reasons. Initially, it's just kind of he's also bringing his case up because it's about Townsend. Because obviously, for one, it's about Sophia, this woman who is kind of an activist for, against her country, because of her country being one of those countries that, she initially got locked up in an asylum apparently in 2006 because she didn't do ignored her male guardian's orders or something like that. And obviously, she got asylum here in the U.S. and she's been fighting for rights of getting the LGBTQ plus community out of places where there's regimes that would come after communities like them. So it's she's a big pillar of hope and inspiration, and now basically she speaks out against, I think, the Saudi Arabian royal family for their stances on a lot of stuff. So because of that, she's a target, and that's what this is all about. Townsend is basically getting paid by them to track her down because they want to kill her, they want to silence her. And even the complicated thing is, even Captain Kidd's no, I'm actually a big fan, she's an inspiration. Which Townsend's yes, she is. And he looks at it as, this is a profitable situation, because if she dies, yes, she's going to inspire so many more. He's I hope so, because the royal family constantly loves getting rid of its competition. So for him, it's I want her to die and inspire more people, because then they're going to need someone like me to constantly capture those competitors so they can have them killed. So obviously, looking at this from a business opportunity standpoint, at least, despite once again, it's always interesting what criminals even criminals she's actually an inspiration. I'm actually a big fan of the work that she's able to do. Captain Kidd says that at the very least. Also, at the same time, you have the whole Rakeaton and Park situation happen at the same time. He ends up finding out that she's tailing him, and obviously this information, Rakeaton ends up going to Reddington. I'm wondering what this whole cyber attack thing was. That was obviously Reddington's let's focus on that, but Rakeaton's no, I'm telling you that the FBI is coming after me, you need to handle Cooper, and you're not doing it. He's I will, I told you I will. He's if anything, it's you're the one that caused this problem in the first place, because you decided to handle things your own way. You killed an innocent person, Andrew, and now because of that, Cooper was already suspicious of you. Now you're dodging them? Makes him even more suspicious. So basically, sit down and shut up and keep your head down low. He's well, you should be thanking me for blah, blah, blah. Thanking me for keeping things at peace in Moscow. How about, and he's how about I break your jaw, wire it shut, and then feed you blended cheeseburgers into your belly until you burst. I was oh, I love it when Reddington gets scary. And he was once again, shut your damn mouth, keep your head low, and leave this to me. I told you I will handle it. I will handle it. Now leave before this conversation gets before this whole thing gets very unsavory. It's love it when you get all scary like that, Reddington. But once again, at the same time, they have to hurry up and find Sophia because Sophia, I was about to say Sophia, because she's all like, obviously, like if they don't track her down before the deal goes down, then the people sent there will kill her. That ends up taking a very interesting turn. I mean, there's even that conversation between Aram and Wrestler where it was kind of like, okay, so, you know, it's like, what? We're having Park trail Rakitin just so we can confirm that Reddington's in 13, that he's a traitor. Mr. Reddington's a traitor. Liz is working with a very bad dude who's willing to kidnap human rights activists. And now we're essentially trailing a modern day pirate. He's like, yeah, my life was kind of less crazy. You know, I should have never left the circus or something like that. And then like even a wrestler looking, I'm like, wait, did he mean that literally, or is he talking like? At first, I didn't know whether he meant the literal circus or whether he was talking about like, because you know how they call the political spear the circus. I was like, did you have something like political? Like, I was like, he must meant that politically. He must not have meant that. He said no. Later on, we find out he did mean the circus, because even. Wrestler brings it up, and Cooper's like, wait, you were in the circus? It's like, yeah, I ran away from home once I saw so-and-so like juggling 75 plates. I was hired as a roadie on Monday. I lost my virginity to a trapeze artist on Tuesday. She left me for the strong man on Wednesday, and I was back home watching Jerry Maguire on Thursday. It was like, it was quite the whirlwind. I was like, wow, Aram. It's like, how is it that we're at season 8 and this is the first time we're hearing about this? How are we going this long never hearing about that? That's crazy. I mean, still, there's like I think a lot about Aram we still don't know. There's we're still learning stuff about Wrestler. You know, kind of got introduced to his brother last season. You know, so it's not that crazy. You know, we're still kind of filling in the gaps for a lot of people. I mean, we're only just kind of learning more and more about Park. So, but regardless, this whole Captain Kidd situation, it was interesting how they ended up finding out about him, because it's like, well, the drugs were cut with like baking soda or something like that, but then like, because obviously like, which I love, like the way Aram was able to kind of jumpstart a lot of this investigation is that he spent all night like buying drugs off the internet, and he was like off the dark web, and he's like, yeah, it's kind of scary. I guess for him it's just like kind of walking in those dark circles, and luckily they were able to kind of narrow down some of the people involved, because everyone else like had either did it in person or had specific drop-offs, but one led them to Captain Kidd. And sadly, when they went there, the drugs were gone, because it turns out the guy that they thought like, oh, maybe he dropped off the drugs. In fact, like he got caught by like a taxi cab, nearby taxi's like camera. It turns out he was stealing. They had a specific name. And I guess it's like, they never really went into it, but I guess they're just people who come and like basically like steal from, I don't know whether it's specifically Captain Kidd or just anyone else, because basically he has such a large network of people. It's like, we don't know like how many people are actually under his thumb, but the fact of the matter is he's got all these different places, and we basically robbed them, and that's why they couldn't find the drugs. But it also turns out the drugs, that, cause we tie it back to earlier in the episode when we got Captain Kidd's first like job in the episode, and it was a guy that basically works for the police, where he examines him and other people examine drugs. It's like, okay, they need to know whether or not these are the actual drugs that they think they are, and they kind of confirm it. And he turns out that the guy they interview in the episode, Tyler, he's like, yeah, I'm not the only one. There's plenty of other people in my position who do the same thing. It's a whole network of people. And Tyler eventually leads them to Captain Kidd, which there's a whole conversation of Captain Kidd being like, yeah, I'm not going to turn on Townsend. Give me full immunity. I'll tell you where Sophia is. But for Cooper, it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Which even Wrestler was like, oh, so we're going to sweat him out? He's like, no. He's like, I'm tired of being played by criminals. It's like, we make these deals with them and stuff like that. Which Wrestler is like, it's kind of part of their job. And he's like, yeah, but I'm tired of getting played by criminals. So we're not going to play their games. We're going to sweat him out. You're going to try to figure things out. And so Reddington's there, but like, oh, let's introduce him to Brimley's Badger. And it's like, yeah, but that's not the only reason why you're here. And he's like, You're right. I was hoping we could all come here with a little truth. Captain Kidd, us. And so it's like, because of your higher hypertension, how about we start with us first? And so there's the back and forth between Reddington and Cooper about like, oh, I know what the whole deal is. I know this and that. It's like, you know, if you are a traitor to this country, I won't be able to stand for that. Which he's like, for the final time, I would tell you, I am in no shape or form a traitor to this country. I am not stealing intelligence and giving, which I don't. I think Reddington is playing, like, once again, I never think Reddington lies. I think Reddington will skew the truth. I believe he will never tell you everything. Like I said, maybe if you can bring up an example, you're probably like, oh, Michael, there's this is this, and examples of him lying. Once again, that also depends on your definition of a lie. Is it, will you believe, do you think a omission of truth is considered a lie? A lot of people would. So once again, him not telling you everything, is that a lie? I think that has to be brought down, that comes down to each individual person. But I don't, at least to my recollection, once again, I could easily be proven wrong. I don't think he's ever outwardly lied. He's just never corrected people on certain beliefs. Granted, this is one of the few times he's actually gone out of his way to be like, I'm not in 13. Because when it was like, oh, you're Ilya Kozlov, he was like, if that's what you believe, sure. Never confirmed it, just kind of went with it just because Dom told Liz that, and he just kind of ran with that. Regardless. But this time he's being like, yeah, do not, trying for his sake, like, well, more so for Harold's sake, it's like, do not go down this route because I have very dangerous people involved in all of this. My associates are very dangerous and they will come out, and it's like, oh, is that a threat? It's like, in his way, he is trying to protect Harold because it's like, as a friend, as a colleague, please do not do this. Because, and I like it that he's like, I get that you want to believe that I'm not. Like, he's like, I know you're not. It's like, no, you don't know, Harold. You like to think. You think that, you have the pieces to this puzzle that you can put together. And he was like, as I am the puzzle, I will tell you, you can't. That, because obviously he's also trying to say, like, there is something much bigger at play here. I get it. You want to believe Elizabeth because you want there to be some reason, some justifiable reason for all the stuff that Liz has done. You want it to be that I'm in 13, I'm this big threat to intelligence and stuff like that. So for you, me, being in 13 makes her actions, yes, you don't have to agree with them, but at least you can be like, they're justifiable, but because she's trying to take down one of the biggest threats to national security, that quote unquote being me. So, but for him, it's like, just listen to me. Like, it's not a threat, it's advice. Just don't do this. What's happening right now is between me and Liz. And yes, we don't agree on a lot of things right now, but we would both be beside ourselves. We'd never forgive ourselves if you ended up being collateral damage because of our situation. Which Harold's like, I'm glad for your advisement, but we're not going to use your help for Captain Kidd. We'll get the information from him ourselves. And because of that, Harold goes to Wrestler and is like, go ahead and make the deal with him, full immunity, because we need to get to Townsend first. And clearly saying, like, yeah, he made that statement just beforehand, but it's like, we need to draw a line in the sand. Like, we, have to decide. It's time for us to pick a side in this war, and we've always had Liz's back before now, so we're going to have her back this time. So they're choosing Liz's side in this war. And so they get information from Captain Kidd about where Sophia is. Sadly, the guys get there first, but luckily, but not luckily, they have to record it and everything, so they gave the FBI more time to catch up. But Sophia fought like tooth and nail. She had broken off a piece of the box she was in, stabbed, pointed the gun at the guys, took a couple hours, yeah. Luckily, they showed up in time to kind of help her before the last guy was able to get to her. But it's like, that could easily go sideways, but kudos to Sophia fighting tooth and nail, because she even saying it, and it's like, I won't be afraid, even if you kill me, it's just sitting the message to the person that hired them. It's like, no matter what you do, there will be others that end up taking up this fight, but she wasn't going down without a fight herself, and I thought that was awesome in its own right, But sadly, at the end of the day, things don't work out in many different regards, because in one case, the guy that tried to kill Sophia ends up being sent back to his own country because there's and Cooper's kind of obviously heavily upset by it because it's like we kind of regardless of anything, like the king who had set this whole thing in motion beforehand. It's like, oh yeah, like making deals with the government, and it's like, even though they're dead, like the power of oil is still as powerful as it is. So the U.S. is going to ignore all of this to keep friendly enough relations with the country that has oil. So it's like that kind of comes first and foremost. So we're just going to pretend like none of this happened. It's like, even though it happened here on U.S. soil, it's just the nasty, dealings of just like main justice is willing to ignore all that, which is so effed up. Even Aram having to tell Sophia about that, and it's like, you were buried alive, you were almost executed, and it's just like those people aren't going to like seek punishment. That's the terrible thing. Because no wonder Home Dude was so kicked back about it. They're like, yeah, he's so lackadaisical about it, and that's why he knew that. He knew what was in the bag. He knew that he'd be spared. That there'd be no consequences coming his way. So it's like there is no winning in this because at least we have Captain Kidd to give us information about Townsend. Oh no, we don't, because he's dead. Captain Kidd made it clear from the beginning. It's like, no, you guys can't protect me. Hell, even the marshals are like, oh, you think we can't do our job? It's like, you're going to need more than 3 of you to protect. It's like, Townsend doesn't even know where you are. Oh, turns out one of his people is, with the marshals. I guess that's showing you, like, Townsend's reach goes far. Like, it's most likely, like, Townsend probably has people that work for him in every facet of like probably government agency. So it's probably a thing of he's got eyes and ears everywhere. His network is that large. He's been building it for a long time, so it kind of makes sense. So it's probably a situation of like he had one of his people make sure they got on this job, and it's like, all right, there's this many U.S. Marshals in here, which obviously kills all the U.S. Marshals. And Captain Kidd's like, I didn't say anything to them. I haven't said anything to them about you. And he's like, I know, and you never will. So which obviously he's not the best person anyway, but obviously now both Reddington nor Harold has any clues about getting to Townsend, which is Dembe's whole point of like, your fight with Harold just adds more fuel to Elizabeth's cause. And he was like, I'm not fighting with Harold, fighting Harold's fight with you. And he's like, well, fine, give me my medicine. And so Dembe lays it out. It's like, you need to find some way to make a truce because there are too many wars on too many fronts. Not even just for Elizabeth's sake, but Harold's sake as well. Like, you can't, you need Harold on your side, considering the fact is Liz is signed up with a big enemy. Because when this fight is over, it's not going to end well for Liz is what Dembe's kind of saying, because once she's succeeded in taking you out, like once joining with, like, it's not going to be the satisfactory end, because we don't know where after last episode, we have no idea where Liz is now. Obviously still in contact with Townsend, still doing her thing, but I wonder what Reddington said last episode did it in any shape or form get to her, because maybe, yeah, she did have the satisfaction that she thought she would, but it's like, at the end of the day, we don't know what's going through her mind. Maybe it's making, because the thing is, it's like the devil you know versus the devil you think you know. It's like, yeah, you think, I mean, hell, even it's more like the devil you think you know and the devil you really, really think you know, because she thinks Reddington's the devil that she knows all that she needs to know about, but not considering the monster that she's teamed up with. Maybe in her mind, it's like, once I've taken care of Reddington, then I'm going to take care of Townsend, because obviously you were hunting my mom for so long, but also you're a very bad guy. So it's like the ends justify the means, because not only when it's all said and done am I going to take out Reddington, I'm also going to take you out. Maybe that's her plan, and maybe she thinks when it's all said and done she'll be able to accomplish it, which I don't believe she will, because Townsend's a very powerful foe. But it's also the set thing of Dembe being like, our friend in the East is getting impatient, so there's also that to contend with. And it's like I said, there's just too much going on at once, and it's like, what is Reddington going to do, because once again, it's just kind of like there's a bigger puzzle at play here, that it's like that Reddington is making clear that neither Harold nor Liz sees the bigger play. That's it. And I guess we get a little more insight on who our friend from the East is. Like the dude that we see talking to Rakitan, or rather Andrew. And it kind of gives him the message. It's like, is Reddington unwilling to deal with this? It's like, and Rakitan's like, not unwilling, just unable. And it's like, all right, talk to who you need to know. Gives him this letter. These words have to be followed to the letter. When you're talking to whoever, like, who's going to do all this, you need to give them these very specific words. And he's like, Harold Cooper is the assistant director of the FBI. Like, it's like, well, he needs to be removed from play because he's saying that Reddington and I've known Reddington longer than anyone else. So it seems like this dude is the dude that, like, essentially Reddington's criminal enterprise, this dude is the one who facilitated a lot of it. Like, they built, well, at least, like, Reddington's criminal enterprise is at least a part of, maybe not all of it, but whatever system they have in place, Reddington's criminal organization plays a role in it. So it's like they've built this entire empire together, and probably the system that is supported by that criminal enterprise. Now, like I said, whether that criminal enterprise is the system itself, because Reddington has so many different connections with different criminals all across the world and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's always a question of how much do people know about what he does, about the whole Blacklist situation. I wonder, does his friend from the East know about that? I mean, I believe that's this dude, but well, because I think the Moscow and friend from the East thing is the same thing. Maybe not. So maybe that's just the dude from Moscow, but he's not their friend from the East. I assume he is, but they could be talking about someone else completely different. But I'm under the assumption it's supposed to be him. But whatever the case may be, for him, it's like, so the fact is that Reddington knows how important this system is. We built it together. We've had this system in play for the past couple decades. We've worked together in that time frame. So he knows how important it is. But if he's unwilling to do what's necessary in this particular case, then we're going to have to take care of ourselves, even if it means removing Harold Cooper. So it's going to be interesting to see where things go because, like I said, Reddington's in a tough spot because he's got to worry about Harold, make sure nothing happens to Harold because regardless of not just Liz, even he, like, cares for Harold. Harold is a friend and colleague. And so, but also, like, he also knows how much that will hurt Liz, plus he's got to deal with the Townsend thing, plus this, like, there's so many damn moving pieces to this, everything going on. It's going to be interesting to see what Reddington decides to do at the end with so much stuff being set in motion behind his back. What is this greater puzzle? Like, what is it that, that we're still in the dark about, that Liz is still in the dark about, what Cooper is, once again, this whole M13 thing. Once again, I don't think he is M13, even though, like, it seems like his friend believes him to be, or at least maybe it's just kind of a joke of like, yeah, you play the role of M13 even though you aren't, or maybe he actually is. I just don't think he is because he's fighting it so adamant, but the argument could be the fact is that he is, but it could be just, once again, he went with the flow of being Ilya Kozlov, so it's like, who's to say he's just not playing the role of M13? It's like, it's not me. You think I am, you assume I am, I've took upon this role, but maybe the real N13 is dead. Like the person who's supposed to replace Reddington, maybe that was N13. But this person, whoever he really is, killed the person that was supposed to replace Reddington. And so he's double replacing people. Maybe. Reading too much into it, maybe. I don't know. It kind of makes your brain hurt trying to figure it all out. Because there's, just like Reddington said to Cooper, I am the puzzle. You will not figure out. You will not solve it. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.